Jeremy Prophet, the two-time Great North Wrestling Canadian Heavyweight Champion. And you're all about to be treated to my shoot interview here on the Hannibal TV.
What got you interested in wrestling when you were growing up?
I think I must have been about 3 years old. I saw it on TV for the first time, just Saturday morning wrestling superstars. I saw a match with Bret Hart versus Blake Beverly. I remember it vividly like it was yesterday. That was the first time I ever saw a wrestling match, and I didn't know what it was. I thought it was like, sort of like watching cartoons, but it was with real people and characters, and I was captivated by it, and then I just had to watch week after week after week, and suddenly wrestling became the most important thing. It became what I wanted to talk about, what I wanted to watch on TV, wanted to collect the magazines, action figures, anything wrestling related, I had to have it.
Who did you admire the most when you were growing up as a wrestler?
Definitely Bret Hart. Throughout the years there were other wrestlers that I feel influenced me as both an in-ring performer as well as a person. But definitely Bret Hart would have to be the first wrestler that I guess you could say I idolized.
What made you actually want to actually get into the business? Just your love of the business, or?
I'm the kind of person that feels that in life people should do what makes them happy. I didn't want to spend my life working, a desk job or doing something traditional. I wanted to follow what I felt in my heart, which was a love for wrestling. I didn't know how I would get there, but I knew that people were managing to get to the WWE, get to a professional level in wrestling, and so I knew that the proper channels existed. So when I was about 15 or 16, it's something I started looking into. I had actually heard about Ron Hutchison's school in Toronto. I had heard Edge's story, and I figured, okay, well, at least there's one school in Canada. I knew the Hearts had their dungeon in Alberta, and so I knew there were at least two options that I'd like to pursue. I mean, you go to school to learn a trade or to learn skills. I wanted to learn how to be a wrestler in the same way. So that was when it first started to build in me that, there is a path that I should be taking to get there.
And what school did you ultimately join?
It would be Jacques Rougeau's school. And the story behind that is that I had heard on the radio Jacques doing promotion for one of his events, and he was talking about all the different characters that he had there and the former WWF superstars, and then he had mentioned that he had two kids on the show. He said they were 15 and 16. I think later on I found out those two were actually, one was Kevin Steen or Kevin Owens, and I think the other one was a wrestler either by the name of Gorgeous Mike. It may have been Beef Wellington or another wrestler. These are all people I've met throughout the years, and so that was when I had first learned that, okay, it's possible for kids, people around my age, to be doing this sort of thing. So that inspired me.
What were your first impressions of Jacques when you met him?
It's a funny story because I guess I didn't really show up on the best day when I went for my first training, because Jacques was in a bit of a transitional time with his company. He was very bitter with Pierre-Carl Ouellet, and I guess they had just gone their separate ways. And so my first day of being there, Jacques was giving a speech to the other students saying how people have screwed him over, people have stabbed him in the back, people like Pierre-Carl Ouellet, and how, because of this, he can't have water in his pool at home anymore for his kids. And so this is the kind of Jacques that I saw. It wasn't Jacques the superstar, it wasn't Jacques the former Intercontinental Champion. It was Jacques Rougeau more as a humbled, almost a bit of a broken man when I met him.
You told me once a story where he mentioned that he had hepatitis C when he accidentally started bleeding during a practice. Do you remember that?
Well, that wasn't actually me firsthand. That was a part of that story. What happened was we were doing a training one time, and Jacques had one of the guys in a headlock. He was putting us all through headlock drills, really basic stuff. Jacques was very hands-on with his training. I have nothing bad to say about his training. A lot of guys, they'll say that Jacques neglected them, and it was really the other guys that were there that were doing most of the training. When I was there, I'm proud to say that Jacques was very hands-on, great in his training. So this is one of those occasions. There was some friction on the headlock. We may have been running a tackle spot or whatnot, and there was contact with Jacques, and he began bleeding. And then suddenly he had said, "Okay, guys, I think it's time I stop today." Now it wasn't like he was gushing blood or anything like that, but it was, he was cut and there was blood that was visible. And he ended the practice kind of uncharacteristically early. I'd say probably a good maybe half hour to 45 minutes early. And it was only, I'd say maybe almost a year later, when another one of his students rejoined the school, it was Max Boyer. He had previously been a part of the school, and then he came back after a year-long or so hiatus, and he had explained how Jacques had once told them at a practice after a similar incident that he had contracted hepatitis, and that this was something that was real, it was part of him, and he felt that his students should know that. When I got there, like I said, it was very much a transitional time. Kevin Owens was there for 2 weeks. We barely crossed paths. So, 2 weeks into my training, he was on his way out. Another one that, Jacques had a lot of animosity towards. Pierre-Carl Ouellette had recently made a departure from the company, in addition to other people who, didn't really go on to have any name value, but it was a transitional time.
What was Jacques' animosity towards Owens about in those days?
Now, I don't entirely know the full spectrum of where it started, but I know that Jacques, for the longest time, had wanted exclusivity on his wrestlers. So he didn't want them performing in other companies throughout the province. And then he had kind of lightened his stance on that. From what I was told, he was thinking of maybe retiring, didn't have the time to dedicate to the school as much as before, so he still wanted his students to get experience and evolve as performers. So he allowed them to go to other companies, and then he had a change of heart, and he decided he wanted to take his company to the next level, and so he wanted to have all of his wrestlers exclusive to him, and from what I'm told, he made it seem like there would be big opportunities, WWE opportunities for them in their future if they're exclusive. Now, it put Kevin in a position, from what I'm told, and what I saw as well. I saw him there, pondering. The second week I was there, he was there sitting by himself pondering some sort of heart-to-heart discussion he just had with Jacques. And from what I understand, it was that Jacques had told him, "Look, stick with me. There are opportunities coming with WWE. We'll get you there." But he was getting tons of opportunities with other companies. And he ultimately chose to leave Jacques and take what the independent scene had to offer to him, and that caused a big rift with Jacques. And Jacques would bash him almost religiously. Like, it was not something that Jacques let go of. He would consistently bring up people who've stabbed me in the back, and the first two names when he talked people stabbing him in the back would be either Kevin or PCO. And this is my first days in training. This is what we'd always be hearing.
Did you wrestle on many of Jacques' events in those days?
Yeah, I'd say I competed on about 5 or 6 events for Jacques. I really enjoyed my time there. He treated me very well, both as a trainer and as a performer. I was a featured performer on his shows. Had some very memorable matches with Max Boyer, most notably, who is still a friend of mine to this day. And Jacques, I remember the day I left Jacques, and he had said how he wanted me to sign a contract with him. Now, if that contract has any kind of validity, if it was a real one or not, he had wanted me to sign with him. And he had said, I really admire you. I want to teach you everything I know, but I want to make sure that my investment is protected. I want to make sure that you don't take what I teach you and go somewhere else. Again, whether that means anything or not, I appreciated that he said that. But unfortunately for me, I wanted to expand my horizons. I wasn't satisfied being just the best of the school. I wanted to test my skills against the best the world had to offer.
And you mentioned Jacques brought up Carl Ouellette's name a lot in those days. Did you have much contact with Carl Ouellette at all over the years?
Initially, little to none. I first knew of Carl through seeing him perform in the WWF, obviously, as part of the Quebecers, in ECW, WCW. But personally, I don't think I had met him until maybe around 2004, 2005. I'd seen him performing a few encounters. I had actually been involved. I was a ringside enforcer for one of his matches. And only recently, only in 2016, did I get a chance to actually be a part of a match with Pierre-Carl Ouellet, where we teamed to take on Speedball Mike Bailey and Benjamin Tull. And it was a good experience. Really enjoyed working with Carl. Great guy.
And Vince Russo told us in one of our interviews recently that comparing Carl Ouellet's talent to Kevin Owens is like apples and oranges, that if Carl Ouellet would be in today's WWE environment, he would be considered a much better wrestler than Owens. How would you compare the two physique-wise and in-ring ability-wise?
Well, I mean, physique-wise, there's no comparison. Carl Ouellet is an imposing, muscular individual. You know, you look at Kevin Owens, he looks like your average person. And in a lot of ways, and I'm trying to put a positive spin on this, I know with Kevin and myself, there's clearly disdain, there's clearly dislike, that's fine by me. But I'm trying to put a positive spin on this in that I think Kevin looks like the average person you would see in the audience. I mean, you can go anywhere. You can go to Wendy's and you'll see a guy behind a counter looks like Kevin. You'll go to GameStop, you'll see a guy behind the counter looks like Kevin. Pierre-Carl Ouellet, on the other hand, is the kind of person you take notice of when he walks into somewhere. You know, he can go into anywhere and you will notice him because he is a large, imposing man. He has definitely a presence to him that never goes unnoticed.
And as far as legitimate tough guys around this scene, where they're both from the Quebec independent wrestling scene, who's considered legit tough between those two?
Well, I mean, Carl Ouellet stood up to Kevin Nash. We all know about that. You know, I've talked to Carl about that. I had a great conversation with him over dinner after a show in Shawinigan, where we talked about that. Kevin didn't really stand up to me. You know, came in like a bull in a china shop. Didn't really stand up to me when push came to shove. And so, you know, when it comes to toughness, I'd say if those two were in an octagon, my money would be on PCO.
And another wrestler from this area that made it in WWE for a while was Sylvain Grenier. What do you know about how he ended up with a WWE contract relatively early in his career?
A case of right place, right time. I know Sylvain very well. Sylvain was very good to me throughout my career. I went and did tryouts with the WWE in December of 2009, and it was thanks to Sylvain and his wrestling school and the knowledge that I picked up there that I was able to do as well as I did. I think very highly of him, despite the fact that not a lot of people do. I think very highly of him. The circumstances surrounding his getting hired, I don't know the details too well, but it seems like it was just the right place, the right time. He was in Florida. Pat Patterson saw him. He had the look. And I mean, it can't be denied, Sylvain Grenier made a great career off of a great appearance, great physique, good-looking guy. You know, sometimes that's all it takes, you know, star power, appearance. What we just talked about with Kevin, you know, and in PCO, it's like Sylvain is someone on appearance, that's someone that can be molded into a star, in my humble estimation.
And you mentioned your WWE tryouts. How did you end up getting your first WWE tryout?
The first tryout, it was a lot of different things coming together to get me there. I'd say the very first step towards that would have to be attributed to Sylvain. We were at a show for a promotion here in Quebec, and he had said, I'm opening a wrestling school. Anyone who wants to make it big in wrestling should come check out my school. I'm the only guy with contacts for John Laurinaitis, who is WWE's talent guy, the only guy with contacts for Terry Taylor, who is TNA's talent guy. So if you want to go anywhere in this business where you can make a living, my school's the place to be. In fact, I'm not doing the story justice, because what he actually said was all of that, and he said, I encourage you all to come to my school, because believe me, you guys need it. And to be honest, 99% of that locker room definitely would need it. So that was the first step, was going there. You know, training twice to 3 times a week at that school, and also being on the road with Sylvain too, and you know, just absorbing knowledge. As much as people can say Sylvain had an average career in the WWE, even by his own estimation, he says that he had an average career. Had he had the opportunity to go back, he'd be a million times better. But even at that, it's still someone who's been on the road for years, doing 300 matches a year. there's a lot of knowledge to be had there, and I was appreciative for that. So that would have been the first step. Then I met an individual by the name of Mike Bucci, who some may know better as Simon Dean or as Nova. Another great guy, and really just a chance encounter. He happened to be coming out of the dressing room. I had just arrived at the arena. I think I had Matt Morgan and Al Snow with me. I picked them up at the airport, and we're arriving at the arena. I'm walking in. I'm not even in my gear or anything. I'm just dressed nicely, but not in wrestling gear. He's coming out of the locker room, and he sees me, and it's just this moment of, okay, well, you have a great look. You really, have you ever tried it with WWE? Have we met before? And it was just like that. And to me, these are strange things. I'm just like, no, I have never tried it with WWE. This is, I know who you are because of TV, but I don't know that we've ever met one-on-one and whatnot. And he just said, okay, before the night is over, I need an 8x10 of you with as much information on it as possible. I'm going to make sure that it's on Ty Bailey's desk, who I believe was Ty Bailey was the head talent scout, talent relations person for WWE.
Yeah, he was under John Laurinaitis, I think, at that time.
Yeah. And true to his word, Mike Bucci helped me out a lot. He was there for advice. He was there to put in a word for me with the company. Even when I was there doing the tryouts, he had contacted Ty Bailey and said, have you had a chance to see Jeremy? And, I'd be telling him, I'd be saying, Mike, why are you doing all this for me? You don't know me from Adam. Why are you helping me? And he said, he's like, I feel you have something important to contribute. You have a presence about you. I feel you deserve to be there, and I think you'll do well. And I've always appreciated that from him. Now, an interesting story with that is that when I initially sent my application for the talent evaluation camp that they were having, it was initially refused. I got an email back in my junk mail saying refused. And I was very surprised by that it had been refused. And I had asked Sylvain about it, and I don't know if it's true or not, but I told him, and he had said he's going to have Pat Patterson, who had also seen me perform, he was going to have Pat Patterson contact them. And then I had received another email a day later saying approved. So I feel that it was a combination of Sylvain, Mike Bucci, as well as Pat Patterson being able to get me to that tryout.
What was the feedback you received from that tryout?
Outstanding feedback. I had asked around with some of my fellow tryout people what they had gotten, and we had compared notes, and my feedback was fantastic compared to theirs. If I remember it off the top of my head, they said I had an original presentation and performance, showed good stamina and endurance, had a credible physique, but it seemed to be right across the board. They would tell everyone, you came in looking well, but we want you to improve your physique a little bit, maybe put on some more size. But beyond that, they said I gave original matches, original presentation, spoke with confidence. I was really under the impression I was going to get hired. On the very last day of that tryout camp, Pat Patterson requested to see the best. He said, we don't have a lot of time, I only want to see the best guys. They did 3 matches. There were 6 of us. I was in the 3rd match of 3 with who's now Jinder Mahal, Raj, and we did a great match. We already knew each other. We had worked with each other before. We were both very comfortable. Did an outstanding match, and he was awarded a contract. He went on to have his career in WWE. He's still there now. And at the end, I was pulled aside by Steve Kerr. And he pulled me aside. He didn't pull anyone else aside. And he said, you have nothing to be ashamed of. You impressed all of us. You have a future in this company. I know it. It's not just one contract that we're giving out. We gave out one today because that's all we had. But we're going to be sending the top 10 for consideration, and you are definitely part of that top 10. Pat Patterson also told Sylvain the same thing and said, your guy did excellent. We were actually 2 that went down. There was another wrestler by the name of Darko. He's a 7-foot giant, Darko. And the word from Pat Patterson was that, Jinder Mahal was number 1. We were 2 and 3. Who was 2? Who was 3? I don't know. But that was the word from Sylvain that came from Pat Patterson based on that tryout.
You never heard back from them, is that correct?
No, never heard back from them. And in fact, I got in touch with them myself for the first ever series of tryouts that I did at a TV taping for them. They were coming to Toronto and Ottawa. And I was saying to Sylvain, when I was there, they said, submit your stuff online. We have a system. Just, upload matches, upload photos, and we'll get in touch with you when we're coming to town. So I submitted everything. I sent applications. The day that the show was announced, I sent an application saying I'd like to be a part of the show, and no one got back to me. So I talked to Sylvain, and he said, well, I'm going to SmackDown. I'll bring you to SmackDown with me. Don't worry about Raw. But I really felt I want to be a part of Raw. Now, that very same week, I had a show in Thunder Bay, Ontario. Wrestled Scott Steiner there. Great match with Scott Steiner. Another great guy. And then I had already booked in advance my flight to go to Raw with no confirmation from the company whatsoever. And so it happened to be Sunday morning. This show was Saturday. This was Sunday morning. I got a call. My flight is leaving that same afternoon. And Sylvain said, hey, I spoke to the office. They're going to be giving you a call. I got you on Raw, and I'll see you at SmackDown. So things just fall into place. I booked the flight knowing I would get there. Got on the plane, went to Raw, and it was intimidating the first time going in there. You never see that side of things. So you're getting a whole new perspective, and I didn't know the etiquette. I didn't know where I was supposed to change. I didn't know where I was supposed to sign in. I didn't know any of that. But thankfully, one of the refs, he's no longer a referee there. He was very helpful. He guided me around, and I had a great encounter with John Laurinaitis at that particular Raw. I was there to get hired. I wasn't there to, just sit around and eat catering and take in the moment. I was there to get a job. I was very serious about that. And I was there with, there were 6 others, if I'm not mistaken, one of which is Sammy Zayn today. Now, Sammy Zayn was, really buddy-buddy with a lot of the guys there. He obviously was doing Ring of Honor as El Generico. He had a bit of a name on the independent scene. So certain guys kind of knew who he was, and then he was, really buttering up to a lot of the guys. But I noticed John Laurinaitis was in catering, and I said, I'm going to wait for him. And I must have waited about an hour outside of catering, just waiting, because I said, this may be the only chance I get to talk to him. He probably has his own office. He has to work production. I got to get him now. It's my only chance. So I waited and waited and waited. And a lot of this was also influenced by the fact that someone had told me a story. I think it was the Pope, Elijah Burke, D'Angelo De Niro. He had told me that there was a guy from OVW that had been signed just through talking to Johnny, just through going to him and actually having the balls to just go up to him and say, I want to work for this company, and I don't care if you guys pay me less than my real job pays me or whatever it may be, I want to work for this company. So that inspired me. I said, you know what, I'm going to give it a shot. Plus I have the credentials of Florida and their approval to actually bring something to the table. So I waited for him. He came out. I stopped him and I said, I'd like to have a word with you. And he said, okay, fine, kid, what do you want to tell me? And he just seemed pissed off. He just didn't really want to give me the time of day. And I said, well, I'd like to work for this company. I want to know, what do I have to do? And he looked at me and he said, I think you should cut your hair. Yeah, you should cut your hair. And I looked at him a little dumbfounded and I'm like, that's it? I need to cut my hair. And he said, yeah, you need to cut your hair. Yeah, I mean, it's not doing you any favors, I mean, I'm looking at you, you're what, you're 5'8", 5'9"? I'm like, well, I'm 5'10". And he's like, yeah, you're 5'10". He's like, this guy over here, and he points to Justin Gabriel, he's like, this guy's 5'10" also, and he looks like he's 6'2" compared to you because he's got short hair. This long hair is keeping you down. I don't know what the issue is with long hair. I know a lot of guys, they go in there, they cut their hair, they're told to cut their hair. No idea what it is. But once we got past that, he said, and also, you look like Kofi Kingston. I already have a Kofi Kingston. Personally, I don't think I look like Kofi Kingston, but he seemed to think so. I don't know. Maybe all people this color look the same. I don't know. So, anyways, I say to him, when he asked me, what makes you better than Kofi Kingston? And I said, well, I do think I'm definitely better than Kofi. I mean, I'm younger. I don't have all the days on the road that he's had, the damage to his body. I think that I'm a lot more charismatic. I'm a much better talker. I'm more eloquent and well-spoken. Really just trying to sell myself. No slight on Kofi. It's just, here's me going in there selling me. And so the discussion kind of goes around a little bit more, and he's like, how about this? On a scale of 1 to 10, what do you give yourself as a performer? And I love that I had met Tyson Kidd on a number of occasions, and he says that he still tells people this story, because there were a few guys listening, and he was one of them, and he had given me a great review when I went down to Florida, and it's always been good to me. TJ's a great guy. If you're watching this, get well soon. You're a hell of a guy. And he said, I'm the only one to ever get out of this trick question that Johnny Ace liked to ask, where he said, on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you give yourself? And I said, I'd say I'm about an 8. You know, and to this day, I still feel that, you know, I'd be about an 8. I'd be somewhere between an 8 and a 9. But what I'm told, I have a high opinion of myself, but I do believe I'm about an 8 or a 9. And he said, oh, you're an 8. You're an 8. You know, I think Shawn Michaels is an 8. Are you sure you still want to rate yourself an 8? And the way Tyson tells us that, you know, this is usually where guys crumble, because they'll say, oh, well, you know, in that case, you know, maybe I'm not an 8, maybe I'm about a 6. And then Johnny will say to them, well, you're a 6, why am I going to hire a 6? You know, I don't need a 6, I want a roster full of 10s. Or if they say, oh, no, I'm still an 8, and oh, so you think you're as good as Shawn Michaels then? So you know, you have an ego, I'm not going to take you, you know, you don't deserve to be here, who do you think you are? And he said I'm the only one to give the right answer, or an answer that didn't allow Johnny to say that, because I said to him when he said, Shawn Michaels is an 8, do you really feel you're an 8? And I responded to him and I said, no, actually, in my opinion, I'd say Shawn's a 10. And if Shawn's a 10, I'm definitely an 8. And he kind of didn't really know what to say. But then he said, so you're telling me if I put you in that ring, you're going to show me you're an 8? You're going to show me you know what you're doing and you belong here? And I said, yeah, definitely. And he said, fine. And he's taking this down in his BlackBerry. What's your name? I give him my name. He says, okay, I'm going to put you in the ring, and whatnot. And he's like, and if you screw up, then I never want to hear from you again, and you're never going to hear from us again. Do you still want this opportunity? I looked him dead straight in the eye and I said, yeah, you're damn right I want this opportunity, because this may be the only opportunity that I ever get. So if I go in there, if I fail, the only person I have to blame is me. The only thing you're going to hear from me is, thank you, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. And that's just the kind of guy I am. He admired that. At that point, he was like, okay, kid, you got guts. You're a lot like me, you know. Let's get to know a bit more about you. And then, you know, he was asking more questions, took me into the promo room. And it was a lot for my first time being behind the curtain. This is just, you know, me being ballsy and happened to get me somewhere. I wasn't really given a tryout match there. It was Raw. They were behind schedule. They said they even had a hard time, a longer time than usual, setting up the ring and the stage and whatnot. But they did take me to the promo room. I shot some promos with Steve Lombardi, with the Brooklyn Brawler. Josh Matthews was also there for the promos as well. They had told me at the time that they found my promos were too over the top. They said they were going with more of a reality TV kind of base. They want people to talk more like normal people, not like characters, which, you know, me with wrestling, growing up watching it, it was always about characters. Like, they literally told me, and this is a direct quote from Steve Lombardi, he said, if The Rock were there today, and this is in 2010, The Rock had not made his big comeback to host WrestleMania and whatnot, but he's like, if The Rock were here today, he wouldn't be all elaborate and be like, finally, The Rock has come back. No, he wouldn't be like that. He said he'd be like, finally, The Rock has come back. And they were trying to drill this in, that, you know, this is what the company wanted. But, you know, the company's always changing what they want. It's just the way it is in the industry. But that was the criticism I was met with, was that my promos were over the top. I met with Johnny later on that day, and before that he had asked me, he says, what makes you think you're so good? And after going through a number of different answers, I said, you know, your staff in Florida, if you trust them, if you trust Steve Kern, why don't you give him a call and find out how well I did at your camp? And he's like, well, if you did so well at my camp, why haven't I heard of you? And I said, I'm wondering the exact same thing. And he made the call. He came up to me after Raw was done, and he said, okay, so I heard your promos were a little over the top. No problem. I called Steve Kern. He puts his arm around me. I called Steve Kern. He told me you ranked amongst the highest of anyone at that camp. So I'm anxious to see what you can do in the ring. So I'm thinking here, okay, the next day, SmackDown, I'm going to get an opportunity. What's the opportunity going to be? You know, I'm pretty much riding a high at that point. And I get to SmackDown, and I get to go in the ring. This is after we're like how many guys? I almost want to say we're over 20 guys that are there. They were doing this thing with the Straight Edge Society. They were shaving people's heads with CM Punk. And so they needed a lot of bodies to choose different people. And we're like 20 guys out there. I get to go in the ring with Jamie Noble. We wrestle around for what felt like maybe 2 minutes. And then he got called to do something. 2 other guys went to go in. Dean Malenko was watching outside the ring. And I asked Jamie, I said, how did I do? And he said, it's hard to tell, man. I was in there with you for 2 minutes. He's like, you didn't do anything wrong, but I can't tell how good you are in 2 minutes. I couldn't tell how good anyone is in 2 minutes. From there, what happened was I was standing on the other side of the ring, and Kurt Hawkins and Vance Archer's Lance Hoyt, they came up to me, and Hawkins is like, are you Jeremy? I'm like, yeah. And he said, we're wrestling you tonight on SmackDown. And I'm like, okay. You know, like, and at that point I'm thinking, okay, maybe this is going to be, this is going to be the match. I'm like, are we on SmackDown? Is it a dark match? He's like, no, it's on SmackDown. It's going to be us against you and another guy who just happened to be standing beside me. Tyler Turba was his name. And so I had that match. And then afterwards, just standing around the ring, and they said, okay, we need a guy to fight Dos Caras, to fight Alberto Del Rio in a dark match. He hadn't debuted yet on TV, so they wanted to have him wrestle local. Even on the papers that were posted with the match listing, it was listed as Alberto Del Rio versus Dos Caras Jr. versus local. So they pull aside Sami Zayn. And Jamie Noble, I guess because he knows him from having wrestled him in Ring of Honor and on the Indies and whatnot, him, Billy Kidman, and Zayn, who's not under contract, he's not signed to WWE or anything, they're discussing who should have the match. So they say to him, we need one of these guys to do a dark match. Who do you recommend? Do you know any of them? And he says, well, I mean, I can always do the match, and I don't blame him for pushing himself. It's good to push yourself, and I would have done the same thing. Anyone would have done the same thing. So give me the match. Why give it to somebody else? I don't fault him for that. So he's like, I could do the match, and then they're like, well, you're under contract to Ring of Honor. We don't know if we can call you, if we can call you El Generico, or what we can do. And so then Kidman, who had seen me in Florida, kind of took a bit of a liking to me. And he said, how about Jeremy? And that's when Zayn proceeded to essentially bury me to the officials. He had said, oh, I don't know about him. I don't know him too well. Despite the fact that, I've had many conversations with him. We even wrestled.
You got him booked in Great North Wrestling once, I recall, as well.
I did get him booked in Great North Wrestling. That's true. Yep. As well as the fact that we had wrestled each other, and I had no personal animus towards him whatsoever. So it came as kind of surprising that he was like, well, I don't know him that well, he's kind of green, he's just nonsense that he's spouting. And, he may deny that he did this, but, even his good buddy, Kevin Steen, confirmed that he did say this. And I was standing right there. I mean, I was standing where the ring steps are for when you go into the ring in WWE. He was right in the aisleway. Everyone's kind of looking away, kind of playing this game of like, well, they're talking about us, but we're not going to look at them. Not me. I didn't really care. I'm looking right at him as he's saying this. I'm as close to him. I'm probably about, I'd say, 5 feet from where he's standing and looking at the discussion like, okay, what are you going to say about me? What are you going to say about me? And then he says that. I know for a fact that Kidman suggested me, and he proceeded to bury me. So much so that same day I was in catering, and really the funny thing about it is like I didn't really care because I already had my match for SmackDown already given to me. So the fact that he buried me there, it's not like he robbed me of a match. I still had it. I just think that it was a gutless, cowardly move of him to do that sort of thing, to be able to say those kinds of things. If someone had asked me about him, I would say, here's a guy from the same province as me, gone through the same system, the same struggles, wrestled the same guys. Hey, if I want someone to get a break, it's going to be the guy that I know really well, the guy from here. I'm not going to go bury him for nothing. So we're in catering, and I noticed that he had left catering. I leave there, and I go to confront him, and he's like, oh, hey. I'm like, yeah, hey, can I get a word with you? And he's like, what's up? I'm like, so apparently you don't know me, you want to go and bury me to those guys? And he said, look, man, look. And he's really on the defensive. He's this is I told the story about Kevin being on defensive. Kevin wasn't on a defensive of like on his heels and backing up. This is really like backing up and genuine fear coming off of Rami. And he's like, look, man, I wasn't trying to do, I was trying to push me, okay? I was trying to push me. I wanted the match. I did what I had to do. And, and it's funny because people, they'll talk about him, and I don't know if they're just charmed by the character that he plays. El Generico was always a charming character that he played. Now with Sami Zayn and everything, he comes out skipping and happy and this and that. But no, he's a real backstabbing coward is what he is. I'm not going to add any kind of vulgarity into this. I'm not going to stoop to that level. But very much what he did there was gutless and cowardly.
And you mentioned the match you had on SmackDown. How was the match itself?
The match wasn't much. I mean, we were given 2 minutes, maybe less. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the experience of being out there. I was loose, I was calm, not nervous in the least. The only thing I was a little worried about was when I was working with Noble, I had pulled my groin a little bit, so I was a little worried about that. But what constantly went through my head was like, I got to work through the pain here because they're going to give this opportunity to somebody else, and I'm not ready to give it up. But as for working with Hawkins and Archer, good guys. The first thing Archer said to me, I always remember, was that tonight, you guys are superstars. Don't get starstruck. Just go in, do your job. Interesting story though was Hawkins. We had planned a beginning, and in the beginning of that match, if you watch it, I'm sure it's on YouTube. You guys can watch it. He slaps me in the face. Initially, he was supposed to slap me in the face, and I was going to slap him back. And that was the plan. We ran it by Arn Anderson. Everything was going to be good for that. And we're in the hallway, literally, I'd say maybe 20, 25, 30 minutes before the show, before our segment. And we're going over that, and Michael Hayes sees it, and he just starts to lose it. He's like, I'm trying to build you. You can't have him slap you. That's taking away everything that you're doing to him. You can't do that. And then he pulls me aside, and he's like, I want you to understand. I want you to understand, kid. Your time will come. One day it'll be you squashing the other guys, but these are my talents. These are guys I'm building. I can't have you lay a finger on them. And that altered the match. So initially, yeah, I was supposed to get a slap in on him, and it didn't happen. But that's all right.
You mentioned Archer. He's injured now, but he was a successful tag team with Harry Smith, Davey Boy Smith Jr. in Japan. And you have an upcoming match with Harry Smith in Great North Wrestling. It's going to be part of the Cage Wars event, May 13th in Smith Falls. You have a bit of a history with Harry, and this is going to be a very unique match in an actual MMA cage for the first time ever, an entire event held in a cage. So you want to just tell us a bit about your history with Harry and your thoughts on that match?
Well, I mean, with Harry, it goes without saying, he comes from a legendary family, Hart family, son of the British Bulldog. You don't get much better of a pedigree than that. I've wrestled Harry before. We were in a tag match. I faced the imposing duo of Harry and Bobby Lashley. Definitely two of the strongest people I've been in the ring with. Harry may be the strongest person, just physical strength, brute strength, that I've ever been in the ring with. And I say this because in that match that we had, it was as if he and Bobby Lashley were trying to outdo each other. So one would do a press, the other one would do a military press. One would do a stalling suplex, the other would do it. One would do a overhead belly to belly, the other would do an overhead belly to belly. And I can say that, given the fact that they're around the same size, Lashley was using strength to do it. Harry, it was effortless. I've never been thrown around so effortlessly by someone. It's almost humbling. If I were a person that gets humbled, I'm not. I'm a person that gets angry when those kinds of things happen. And so I'm looking forward to getting in the cage with Harry. He flaunts his skills as a martial arts practitioner. He talks about training with Josh Barnett and his team, and I'm sure he trains very hard. But I do a lot of training myself, and being in that environment, it's not a pro wrestling environment whatsoever. And I'm anxious to test my skills against Harry. You see, when it comes to Harry, I have to say that I have lost a little bit of respect for him over the years. Here's someone who, unlike myself, who prides himself on being a clean athlete. Harry Smith, he has a wellness violation to his record in the WWE. Not at all like me. You would never see that happening. I think that before our match, Harry should in fact submit to a drug test, which I am also going to do. Jeremy Prophet has no problems taking any kind of drug test. I will submit to that. I think also the fact that Harry has been looking a little on the heavy side lately, I think he should actually have to drop weight for that fight. I think that would be, within fairness. I walk around at about, a little over 220. Harry around a heftier, chunkier, maybe 280 pounds or so. So, I think he should at least make the weight cut to try and meet me, around there at that, realistically, I wouldn't mind fighting in a more of a light heavyweight type of fight, 205 or so. But if this is what's going to get me on the card, this is what's going to get me the opportunity to get him in the ring and use him as a stepping stone to something greater within the octagon, then I'm all for it. I just hope he comes in clean and lean, because he's going to need to be at his very best, because in an octagon, he's not going to be throwing me around effortlessly. He's going to have to exert a hell of a lot of effort to deal with Jeremy Prophet.
You brought up you were friends with Nova, who used to work in WWE Talent Relations, and he tried to help you. Another guy you worked with that also was in WWE Talent Relations was Tommy Dreamer. What were your thoughts on working with him?
Tommy Dreamer's got to be one of the smartest people in professional wrestling. He once said a quote that he has the greatest brain just short of Paul Heyman, the evil genius himself. And I'd be hard-pressed to find anyone that can dispute that claim. Very smart man, very nice individual, funny too, underratedly funny. I enjoyed working with him in the ring. Outside of the ring, he has so much knowledge. When he went to TNA, he helped create a bit of a resurgence in that company, at least got me back as a viewer. When they did the EV 2.0, I think they called it. He's just someone who's kind of ahead of the curve in wrestling. I think that it's unfortunate he doesn't have a bigger role behind the scenes in a more major company right now.
And another ECW guy you were in the ring with before was Rhino. What were your thoughts on those matches?
I've been on many shows with Rhino. Again, a great guy, very intense in the ring. I was on the receiving end of one of his gores. Part of me wants to say I still feel it. That's not true, I don't still feel it, but at the time, I felt like I was going to feel it for the rest of my life. Just a great performer. A lot of what Rhino does really well, you don't see in his actual presentation, but he also a great mind in the ring.
And Too Cold Scorpio is a guy you've tagged with and wrestled against from ECW as well. What are your thoughts on him, and are his feelings towards Buff Bagwell that he expressed in his shoot interview with the Hannibal TV real?
He hates Buff Bagwell. There's no two ways about it. I spent close to an hour at an airport hearing him just talk about Buff Bagwell. I have a tremendous respect for Too Cold Scorpio. He's been a friend. He's been a mentor. He's someone that I toured with, and if he were not there, I don't know if I would have been able to make it through the tour as unscathed as I did. And also in the ring, just an amazing talent. I think that our skill set is very similar, and it's the kind of person that if I were starting out in wrestling, I would have loved to have as a mentor right from the get-go. So I can only think of all the things I could have learned from him.
And finally, on the ECW people you've been involved with, Steve Corino.
Steve Corino I faced in a triple threat match that also contained Kevin Owens. Not really much to say about that match, and it's something that I've always wondered, because Steve Corino, he wasn't in the best of shape at the time. He was dealing with concussion issues. It was considered one of his retirement matches, but again, not in the best of shape, dealing with issues. The match was good, not something spectacular. What I always found odd was that it had come back to me that Corino had something against me. Now, I take everything with a grain of salt. I had never seen him since, but I don't feel I took any liberties on him. I feel that I was very professional with him. I feel that I didn't do anything to hurt him that I know of, and I feel I was very respectful with him as a person. So it always perplexed me, and it's really something I'd just like to know an answer to, is why word came back to me that Steve Corino had something against me. And I don't know if it was Kevin, because I know they're very close. Kevin considers him a mentor and whatnot. And we've mentioned on many occasions the issues with Kevin and I. But I would like to know with Steve Corino, because he's someone whose work I appreciated. I mean, I first saw him when ECW was on TNN, and that was my first exposure to ECW, and he was a primary key player in that show, and it was an honor to get to work with him. I just think that it's unfortunate, it leaves a sour taste in my mouth that he possibly has some sort of dislike for me for something I'm not even aware of.
And you mentioned Kevin may have been bashing you behind your back to Carino. I'll talk about myself just for a moment here because you actually knew Kevin a lot better than I did. He claims that he trained me when in fact he doesn't have any hand in my training. But a lot of people think that I have something unfounded against him, but is it not true that he has been talking behind my back for years amongst the local wrestling scene?
Well, if it makes you feel any better, he talks behind my back too, and I have that on good authority. Which is funny because, you know, my last memory, and I know I'm taking your question in a bit of a different direction, I'll get back to it, but, you know, my last memory of encountering Kevin, this is literally the last time I saw him, was at CRW, a promotion that I now, you know, proudly own, and he was there to wrestle Frankie the Mobster. It was his last match ever in that promotion. And I remember having spoken to Jimmy Jacobs, who Jimmy Jacobs was a longtime member of Ring of Honor, hell of a great guy, one of the most intelligent individuals in professional wrestling I've ever had the chance to share a locker room with. Great guy. And Jimmy was saying how he had spoken with Kevin leading up to his tryout with the WWE, the one that ultimately would see him get signed, and that Kevin was very nervous about it, and that he had told Kevin, you know, Kevin, you don't have to worry. You know, even if you're out of shape or whatnot, you know, they know what you look like. They know what you physically look like, and they've given you this opportunity. They're not there to judge you on your body. They want to judge you on your skills. You know, and it put Kevin in a bit of a different, more you know, humanized kind of light. And you know, and I was telling him, you know, I had issues with Kevin and with Sammy Zayn, and you know, we were talking about this. And so when I saw Kevin, last time we ever exchanged words, this would be, I'd say this would be about 3 years, I may be off my time frame, but about 3 years after our incident that I previously spoken to you about. And I said to him, Kevin, you know, I just want to wish you best of luck, and to be honest with you, I think they're going to hire you. And I think that, you know, with Kevin, it's unfortunate with me that he responded to my last comments, and he said that he didn't watch the video of what I said and claims that I'm a liar. Now, I am in no way a liar, and it's funny because he tells the exact same story the way I tell it. In fact, he's told this to people when inquiring about me.
And you're referring to the previous video that we posted of you talking about a backstage incident you had with him.
Exactly. Right. And he tells the story the exact same way. So I don't know where he gets that I'm a liar. Maybe it's just, you know, a defense mechanism of his kicked in or whatnot. But when it comes down to it, he tells the story the exact same way, and I have no reason to lie about what happened. It's not as though I'm saying I beat him up or fists were traded or whatnot. It was simply a confrontation, and that Kevin had previously had a reputation as being someone who was tough. But when push came to shove, I stood up to him. He's told this story to many people. So I don't know what the issue is there, but in any event, the last time I saw him, I was under the impression that, you know, things were good between us, and I even said, I think WWE will hire you. I wanted to put him at ease because I knew he was stressing out of this. I mean, he has a family to provide for, he has kids. I understand these things, and so that was my last interaction with him. Now, when it comes to you and stuff he's been saying, I mean, you know, I've heard from numerous people that he's said negative things about you, he's called you dangerous, but I had heard that he had personally contacted Jay Lethal when you had booked him to work the Randy Savage tribute show, and said for him to not do the show and to be weary of you because you're a dangerous individual. I had heard that when you had gone to do a tryout with Ring of Honor, he had spoken to certain people there and had said that they should, you know, not give you the time of day or, you know, be weary of you. There seems to be some sort of animosity between you guys. I know we've kind of talked about it, but it's not really my place to get involved in what that is. But it's just, there are many stories, and I'll use a Kevin reference that he said to me. He said to me one time, there are too many stories about you for it to not be true that you're an asshole. And what I'm saying here is that there are too many stories that I myself have heard with my own ears that indicate that he's got some sort of negativity towards you. And I'm really trying to be as neutral as I can with my words here.
And you've gone against some stars that have made it pretty big in TNA, such as James Storm. What are your memories of working with him?
James Storm's a great talent. I really feel he was the brains behind Beer Money. In working with them, James was the general behind the scenes. I found that he was very open to just about anything. He wants to have really good matches. He wants to be a great performer. You know, no slight on Bobby. Bobby's a little reserved. He's a little quiet. You know, far be it for me to talk bad about a fellow Canadian here. But if you've watched the entire interview, probably get the irony of that. But James, to me, was definitely the leader of those two and had the brain between the team.
And you've also fought a lot of WWE legends, particularly in Great North Wrestling. And
some of my finest work.
You ran into some problems with Koko B Ware that was part of one of our biggest events we ever did in Thunder Bay. Would you like to explain the story to those that don't know?
You mean the technical in-ring physical problems or the mental shortcomings? Which would you prefer to
You can go over the match as well as the behind the scenes.
Now, you know he's a Hall of Famer, right? You know that he set the bar so very high for the Hall of Fame. Being in
they actually call it the Koko B Ware bar now, I believe.
Yeah, that's, you know, I was a high jumper once upon a time, and I would love to see a bar that would be set that high. I'd be clearing that, no problem. You know, with Koko, it's, you know, I don't even know where to begin. Let's start with the in-ring. Now, I don't know if you have the footage still or not, but we were doing this show in a boxing ring. We went through all the stress of getting a ring because 2 people canceled on us with rings. They got what was coming to them. But that's another story. So we're in a boxing ring, so already it's an eyesore, and it's rough to be in. So I had the idea, I don't know why. It's one of those things when you're young and foolish, where I say, I'm going to miss a moonsault. So I tell Koko, okay, I'm going to do a moonsault. Very simple. I'm going to get you down. I'm going to start climbing. You can move anytime you want. I mean, you can move right away. It doesn't matter. I'm just, you know, doing this moonsault, and it'll you know, lead into the finish and whatnot. I get up there, on top, boxing ring, on these very unsturdy ropes. I watch the clip of it. You'd swear the ring is going to cave in from my weight when I start my, my jump. And so I do it. Here I go, going through the air, moonsault, and land right on Koko. He did not move. Did not move an inch, landed right on him, pinned him 1, 2, 3. He did not kick out. And the ref kind of counted the 3 and then sort of made gestures as if to try and, you know, save face and whatnot. I was asking him, are you okay? He wasn't responding. He was there twitching like a piece of bacon on a frying pan. And that's one of the main things I take away from that match. I also watched that match over and over and realized that, you know, that was a very rough ring. And if I can give him one kudos, it would be the fact that I must have bumped him about 4 or 5 times, all of which were involuntary, all of which he was trying to fight it, and there were no complaints. Now, that's the funny part of it, but, you know, really
he pulled the Bret Hart behind the scenes.
Oh yeah, he pulled more than that. That's a disservice to Bret Hart to say such a thing. What happened with Koko is that he did not want to do me any favors when it came to that match. He was asked by the promoter, you know, to put me over. And I'll always remember Abdullah the Butcher, who was also in the locker room, and just saying, don't do anything he tells you. Don't do anything he tells you. This guy shouldn't even be here. You're local. You're Canadian. You're from the country. You know, he's nobody. No one remembers who he is. Half these people probably think he's dead. You should not be putting him over. You're young. It's your time. And Koko, while I wasn't there to hear the speech, but it was described to me, his defense was, oh, come on, man. I'm a Hall of Famer. I'm a Hall of Famer. I can't be doing no favors for no kids. I'm a Hall of Famer, man. They gonna take me out of the Hall of Fame if I go around losing on the indies and whatnot. I swear, Koko came out at the start of that match. I'd cut this fantastic promo on him, and he comes out. He started talking. No one. I think I even say it on the mic. I'm like, no one understands what the hell you just said, and no one did. He didn't even have his bird with him. He had a stuffed animal of a bird. He really looked like a parody of himself.
Actually, I think he had a bird hat.
He had a bird hat, yeah. In every aspect, he looked like a parody of himself. And, you know, when it came down to it, we're going over the match, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be giving you some kicks, and he takes my hand, and he's like, whoa, calm down, brother. I can't keep up with that. You know, me, hey, you ain't gonna feel me. You know, we don't need those kicks. We don't need. So, you know, on top of it, it's like, look, you're acknowledging the fact that you're past your prime. You know, I really don't think on that card he drew anything to that show, and did not want to put over someone who realistically could have tore his head clean off of his shoulders. So no, I don't have very much respect for Koko B Ware. Can't say he was a professional.
And another legend, so to speak, with a bizarre personality that you've worked with is Lanny Poffo. Without going into the details of some of the bizarre anecdotes that he's told you about certain specialties that he can perform on himself, because we've been there and done that. What are your thoughts on him in general? And you actually won your first Great North Wrestling Canadian Championship from Lanny Poffo.
I've had many great matches with Lanny Poffo. I always say it. I say it all the time. Lanny doesn't like me. Lanny doesn't like me. I don't know why. You know, I'm told there was a video where I described a story that he was telling me. Really funny story. Got laughs out of tons of people. A story he's even told himself. I have no animosity towards Lanny. Lanny was always very good to me. Just out of nowhere, he sent me a message saying, I'm unfriending you. And, you know, did it hurt? A little. But, I mean, I think it's kind of petty. You know, I didn't upload the video. I was telling a story that he's told himself. So Lanny may not like me, but Lanny, I still really like you. You know, I think you're a funny guy. I think you're a fun guy to travel with. I think you're a good human being. Sorry you don't like me.
And you've also worked with Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
So easy to work with. Hacksaw has something that I'm envious of as a performer, and that's the ability to, you know, just have that presence where you can come out, do absolutely nothing, you know, say a word or two, and have the whole place in the palm of your hand. He just has to come out and just go, ho, and he has everybody. USA. It's something that I study and try to adapt into my performance, to be able to just have the people in the palm of your hand without having to exert anything. I used to call it the Jeff Hardy phenomenon. How Jeff Hardy can come out to a ring dressed like he was, you know, anybody in the audience, just standing there and bouncing, doing nothing, almost no expression on his face, and the whole place is chanting his name. I think that's a skill that Duggan has, and it's something that I think all wrestlers should strive to develop.
And Brutus the Barber Beefcake, who's been a mainstay in Great North Wrestling, what are your thoughts on working with him?
If you can call it working, I think we did maybe about 2 minutes. He was surprisingly more open to a lot of things than I thought he would be. But you know, Brutus, I would say most of my interactions with him have been pleasant outside of the ring. Like, fun guy to talk to hang out with. You know, just a fun guy to shoot the breeze with. In the ring, we only wrestled for about 2 minutes. I appreciate him with all he's accomplished in wrestling. You know, being open to some of the stuff that we did. And yeah, you know, nothing but good memories of Brutus.
And Tony Atlas, in my research, I noticed you wrestled him. That was a surprise. Yeah,
Tony Atlas and we wrestled in New Hampshire, I believe it was. It was in a tag match. He was with Slick Wagner Brown. I was teaming with Genesis. He's usually a tag team partner of mine. And what I remember about Tony Atlas is I cut a promo that the entire locker room was buzzing about, because I said to Tony Atlas, and they gave me free reign. I really appreciate this company, New England Championship Wrestling, Sheldon Goldberg, he was the promoter. They treated me very well, and we were on TV at the time. And they just said, you know, go to the ring and just, you know, say whatever you have to say. Say anything about Tony. And I started this promo where I said how Tony Atlas, you know, he may be a Hall of Famer, but that doesn't faze me because his Hall of Fame spot wasn't earned. He got his Hall of Fame spot off the hard work of a Canadian by the name of Rocky Johnson, who carried him to tag team championships and to Hall of Fame success. And then he responded to me in saying, well, you're never going to be in the Hall of Fame. I said, that's fine. I may never be in the Hall of Fame, but you're a Hall of Famer, and I'm someone who has something you don't, which is money. That's why you have to come to towns like Derry, New Hampshire, and put on these pathetic performances, because you squandered all your money, unlike someone who's smart like me. And it really got the locker room buzzing, and Tony came to me after the match and he said, you know, that promo that you did, it was great. It got you heat, and honestly, it even got you heat with me. But that's good, kid. That's how I like it.
Sounds like something Lanny Poffo would say, actually. You had a couple of successful Canadian Championship defenses against Scott Steiner, who's known for being pretty hot-tempered, but he's always been pretty easy to deal with in Great North Wrestling. What are your memories of your matches with him, which were classics? I guess you had 3 altogether.
Let me just first say that Scott Steiner is someone that has really not been given his just due by the wrestling community, by the internet wrestling community. Scott Steiner is a tremendous talent. Like, looking at it objectively, in his prime, with the Steiner brothers, you know, the appearance, the physique, all of that aside, his in-ring skills, second to none. From a pure wrestling standpoint, the explosiveness, the size, the power, just a great in-ring performer. And a lot of that gets overshadowed by Big Papa Pump. But I mean, he had the personality, he had the mic skills. You can go back and watch Scott Steiner. You know, I was thrilled to be able to get to do a promo against Scott Steiner, and multiple promos against Scott Steiner, because I think he is one of the best on the mic. He's up there with The Rock, with Steve Austin, with Hogan. Scott Steiner has not only the dialogue, but he has the viciousness, and he can tear someone apart, oftentimes, you know, telling the actual truth. Scott Steiner is very underrated, but getting to work with him was a huge thrill for me, let alone getting to work with him 3 times. I think my greatest accomplishment in those 3 matches would be the 3rd time that we had worked, and he had threw out an idea, and I said, well, you know, we can just go with that, that's fine, you're the veteran. And he said to me, no, I want your opinion because your ideas are good too. So do you think this is a good idea? And, you know, he let me lead the matches and everything. Nothing but good with Scott Steiner, nothing but good.
Bobby Lashley, you mentioned him briefly. What was it like being in the ring with him?
He's a big, strong individual. Great wrestler, athletic, agile, chiseled out of granite. Bobby Lashley, someone who never got his just due in WWE. I remember one of my fondest memories was watching the Great American Bash, where he wrestled John Cena. And a lot of people hate on Bobby Lashley, and that's fine. Bobby Lashley never had half the crowd cheering him and half the crowd booing him when he was in the WWE. He had a lot of fan support behind him, and I remember going to watch the Great American Bash because I really thought he was going to beat John Cena, and I thought we were going to have our first black WWE champion, which still to this day, the WWE title, never been a black WWE champion. There's been The Rock, who's, you know, about as black as I am, and that's about it. And, you know, I thought Bobby Lashley was finally going to be the guy to be able to do that, and he didn't. And then shortly after, they washed him out of the company, and now he gets labeled as having no charisma. He gets labeled all these different things. Bobby Lashley's a star. He's a star anywhere he goes. Watch Bellator, watch Impact Wrestling. Bobby Lashley's a star. I'm privileged to have gotten to work with him and also to spend time with him. Very easy guy to talk to. You know, I can say that I wasn't even supposed to work with him. That was his call. He got to the venue. He's scheduled to work against Harry Smith, and he was having a bit of a bad neck. And so he said to the promoters, my neck kind of hurts. I'd rather work with Jeremy. I think we can have a really good match. And they said, well, we already advertised you against Harry, and you know, we don't want to disappoint the people. And he's like, well, I can maybe do something there, maybe have Jeremy come in after, and you know, maybe him and a partner, and we can team up against them. He's pitching the idea. And they're like, well, no, we really want to have you and Harry. And he's like, okay, well, let me put it to you like this then. Either I'm going to wrestle Jeremy, or I don't feel like wrestling tonight. So the match ended up happening, and I appreciate he went to bat for me. Even more so than that, him and Harry were talking. He just said, you know, screw what these promoters want. How about we just, you know, let Jeremy and the other local guy, have them like roll us up. You know, we'll do our big comeback. We'll be looking like we're going to win, and we'll put them over. You know, they're the local guys. They're the guys that need to look good. They're the guys that need to win. And so, you know, nothing but a professional there, Bobby Lashley.
Another guy that feuded with John Cena was Rene Dupree, and you've worked with him. You got to know him a bit. What do you think of him?
He's a great guy, Rene Dupree. Helped me out a lot. I learned a lot from him. Being on his tours throughout the Maritimes, I got to go to places that I would have never gone to. Prince Edward Island, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and a fun guy to be around. really a fun guy, and I'll always remember on tour, there'd be different things that would happen, different incidents. We had a car crash, but I mean, everyone who does these wrestling tours, you're going to crash a car, you're going to blow a tire, just about everything happened on this tour. 30-day tour, Sunday to Sunday, no days off. Hell of a tour, and Renee was a big part of the reason why that tour was just, nonstop fun. And he'd always look at me and he'd say, Jeremy, you are my number one. Because if ever anything would go wrong, I was the guy that he turned to. And I learned a lot of good things from him. He's a very intense individual, and I think he's another one that it's unfortunate he didn't get the career that he could have had in the WWE. And he's still fairly young, so there may still be time for him if he wants to.
He had a lot of issues with Hardcore Holly in the WWE, and so did this other guy you've wrestled, Mr. Kennedy. What was your opinion of Mr. Kennedy?
Well, I teamed with Kennedy, didn't actually work against him.
Okay.
And yeah, he had some issues with Bob Holly. Bob Holly, said all kinds of stuff against him. I asked Ken about it, and he said, I think that Bob just likes to talk a lot. That was his response. Bob likes to talk a lot. I don't know if they've met up. I don't know if they've made up, but there was some real hatred there, at least on Bob's end. Ken was good to me. I remember I was working very hard to get a spot with TNA. I had done their gut check. I think the video probably still online. Tons of hits. Everyone talking about me, and nothing really ever came of it. But I went to many TNA events, just to show up, to show them I wanted this, and it's still a place that I would like to work. Impact Wrestling, and when I would go, oftentimes Ken would be one of the most accommodating people. I roomed with him. We rode together and stuff, and he's someone who's been pretty good to me. And I don't know what he's up to these days, but hopefully something good, because he's been a good guy to me.
Another guy you wrestled recently was Rey Mysterio. You were involved in a tag match with him. What was that like?
That was surreal, really. To have looked up to Rey all these years for what he did for the smaller wrestler. And I mean, Rey is a lot smaller than me. I still consider myself a smaller wrestler. I stand 5'10" and a half, round a little over 220 most of the time. Sometimes I can be a little less, but I'm pretty much middle-sized when it comes to wrestling. Everyone's getting smaller in the wrestling business now, but I'm still middle-sized, height and weight. Rey's a small guy, but he made it possible, as we hear time and time again, for guys like me to be world title contenders. And so the match ended up being myself, Speedball Mike Bailey, Jack Evans, and Rey Mysterio. And we're putting the match together, and it comes to a part where it's the only two guys that haven't been in the ring yet. It's Rey and myself. And so getting to work with Rey, getting to learn from him, getting his blessing and his endorsement, getting to hang out with Rey afterwards. We watched the UFC together. We got to see Misha Tate beat Holly Holm. Myself, Rey Mysterio, and Conan. Great times. Great guy in the ring. I think he's still got some good years left in him, and I hope I get him again.
And another lucha star, but Puerto Rico lucha, not Mexico, is Carlito, who you've worked with a couple times. What are your thoughts on him?
First thing I would say about Carlito is the same thing I say when anyone asks me about him. One of the most underrated, funny people in wrestling. His deadpan humor, his comedic timing, really second to none. And I can't tell if he's self-aware or not, but fun guy to be around, in the ring, out of the ring. He's a professional in the ring. He's really smooth. No ego, no problems with anything. One of the easiest guys to work with of any big name TV, WWE, ex-WWE superstar I've ever been in the ring with.
And Petey Williams.
I still feel I should apologize to him for the knee that I hit him with in that match. Petey, I had actually trained with Petey back in, I would say it was 2005. Went down to Scott D'Amore's school, trained with Petey Williams, Johnny Devine, Scott D'Amore. I got to know him there. Very pleasant guy. Gave some good, helpful advice. Gave good advice for training. We talked about, because he had a very impressive physique at the time. I mean, he was diminutive, but he was in great shape. He was ripped. So a lot of good advice on training and whatnot. Why I say I should apologize for that knee is because, I was giving him a running knee in the corner. I don't know if there's any footage of it out there. If there is footage of it, I'd love to see it. And I throw this running knee, and I come in pretty hard. This time I pulled down my knee pad and everything, took a run at him, and I don't know if he moved. Maybe I was a little bit off, but I think he might have moved and nailed him right across the temple with it. So, PD, if you're watching this, you probably don't remember, and it's probably better that way, but my apologies for that again.
You talked about your first string of live event WWE tryouts. You also had another couple of chances with them in later years, and you were present for the famous Jerry Lawler heart attack episode of Raw. What were those tryouts like, and also what was the feeling like backstage during that Jerry Lawler heart attack incident?
Well, with regards to the tryouts, things were very different. Now it was William Regal was in charge. There seemed to be more structure to it, and they explained that pretty much now it's TV. If you impress at TV, then you're sent to Florida. And so to me, it seemed like kind of a step back because I'm like, I'd already done Florida, so now it's being relegated back to a lower level. The first day, we didn't have any kind of tryouts. We just sat there. William Regal talked, gave his thoughts on the business. That was about it. I don't feel that we had any real time to talk, any kind of connection, really. It was just kind of general information that he gave us, and everything was rushed because Raw is a live show. It needs to be on the air. If things are behind schedule, then that's the priority, not us, the extras. So there was not really much from a tryout aspect of that Raw, but yeah, there was the Lawler heart attack, and that was scary. I mean, we're sitting there. I was sitting with Jinder Mahal, with Fandango, with Mason Ryan as well, and all of a sudden we just heard the doors slam open, and I didn't know what was going on. I thought there was a fight going on and they were breaking it up. I see Steve Lombardi running over there. I see people coming out of catering. We're ushered out of the viewing area, and we don't know what's going on. I'm asking the other guys, is something happening? Are they filming a promo? What's going on? And one by one, different VIPs are going by. Cena goes by. Orton goes running. Triple H went by. We'd seen him during the day. And then only when Vince McMahon slowly kind of sauntered down the hallway. No urgency by Vince, which tells me a lot about his character. He's not going to panic for anything, and he's the boss there, and I admire that about him. Slowly sauntered, hands in his pockets, just walked, took a look, then we kind of made our way over there, and then we got word Lawler was having a heart attack, and they're trying to resuscitate him. It's getting really serious. People are crying. And then that just put a damper on the mood for the entire evening. And, even the next day we came back in and people were still down about it, not knowing what was going to happen. I remember Santino Marella saying, Lawler was unconscious for like 15 minutes. And he's like, you're clinically dead for 15 minutes or so. And he's like, if you're clinically dead for even like 5 minutes, there's a chance of brain damage. There's a lot of things that can happen. He was out for 15. People lose their speech. They lose, different functions of their body. And so it was really a downer even into the next day when we didn't know what was going to happen. I think it's miraculous that Lawler managed to kick out of that and is the way that he is today. And although I never really had much interaction with Jerry Lawler, from all accounts, seems like a great guy. Seems like someone that never had any ill will towards anyone in wrestling. The expression couldn't have happened to a nicer guy gets thrown around sarcastically a lot, but really in his case, it couldn't have happened to a nicer guy, literally. And it's good to see that he's okay.
So was that kind of the last contact you had with WWE?
Well, there was the next day where we actually got to go in the ring. I had the chance to go in the ring with a very talented wrestler by the name of Tyson Dukes, and I had wanted to put some stuff together. But Tyson didn't seem keen on it. Now, I had done an amazing match, probably top 5 match in my career with Tyson Dukes. Tremendous talent. I will not say, I have nothing negative to say about Tyson. Great guy, great wrestler. So I was excited. I said, okay, this is a good opportunity. Regal's watching, cameras are on. I'm against a guy I know I have good chemistry with. This is a good time to impress. But he didn't really want to put anything together. I had known. I had talked to these guys I was seeing in the States all the time, saying, I've been to 3 TVs in the last 4 months, and this is how it is. I'm like, we have the opportunity to, put something together here and present something that's going to blow them away. And he just wanted to kind of go in there, just go on the fly. And I don't think we had the chemistry that day. I really feel 9 times out of 10, we do tremendously. We just happened to fall on that one day where it wasn't our day. Not to say it was bad, but it wasn't immaculate. And so Regal felt that my footwork wasn't adequate, which inspired me to actually work my footwork. He said to take boxing courses, so I went and I took kickboxing courses in order to improve my footwork. I think my footwork is pretty damn good. And, you know, afterwards we were evaluated on promos and situational promos with Matt Stryker. Matt brought in people and he said, I'm going to throw curveballs at you. You know, so different situations. I don't know what it was for the other people. They were in, the first guy went in for about 40 minutes. Next guy went in for almost an hour. I was in and out, and you know, if Matt Stryker hears this, he can corroborate the story. I was in and out in less than 20 minutes. I can adapt to situations. I think I'm an eloquent, good speaker, and so whatever curveballs he threw my way, it didn't faze me. And so he said, okay, clearly you know what you're doing. Now we just need you to do it in front of the camera. And I knew that last time they said my promos were a little over the top, so I came prepared for this. I was the last one to go in, shot my promo in front of the camera. Regal's there, Steve Lombardi's there. I think it was just those two. And Regal said he loved the promo. He said, you can talk with the best of them. You know, there's no problem there. He said, however, you need to work on your footwork. And he said, that's the main thing that's going to keep you from getting to the next stage of this and getting to Florida is your footwork. And at the time he said, you know, 'cause if you're in there with guys like, he named Dean Ambrose, wasn't on the main roster yet, Seth Rollins, Cassius Ohno, he's like, these guys, these three guys, you know, if you're in there with them, they will eat you alive in there. Now, I don't think footwork is the be-all, end-all of wrestling. I think people with far less skills have made a fantastic living in the wrestling business. William Regal himself even admitted that he has difficulty doing front bumps because he broke his arm doing a frog splash. He managed to have a fantastic career, very memorable career. Nonetheless, I appreciated that when it was all said and done, although I you know, said these things to him, and maybe he didn't appreciate that I stood up for myself, but like I said, if I'm only going to get one opportunity, I'm going to make the most of it. So, you know, he may not have appreciated the fact that I said these actual points to him. The fact is, I appreciated at the end that he had said, I do want to see you back here sooner rather than later. So it's consistently been, you know, doing something, being on the right track and whatnot. However, I have other goals that go beyond WWE. WWE is not the be-all, end-all. With the direction of the company and whatnot, I don't think that I fit into what they're doing and what they're presenting. And, you know, I'd rather not be in that kind of an environment. I know that in wrestling you're conditioned to believe that that's the place you want to go, and anyone who says that they don't want to go there, you know, they're just lying, they're in denial. I don't. You know, I have a very, very well-paying job that I love. I love wrestling, I definitely do, but WWE would not be the place right now that I would want to go to. Ring of Honor used to be a place I did not want to go to. I wanted to go for WWE. But in this day and age, a place like Impact Wrestling, Ring of Honor, New Japan, you know, these are places where I would love to perform. I think I could apply my craft and enjoy it. WWE, not the place I'd want to be.
And you're going to continue on with Great North Wrestling, of course, and any ideal opponents? You've wrestled so many stars in the future. I know you don't want to wrestle me anymore because I've beaten you up too badly. But who would your ideal opponent be for the future?
You know, you're like a drug. Now, you know, I've been drug-free my entire life, but you're like a drug because I always think, okay, you know, I can't do this anymore. I'm not gonna wrestle you. But every time one of our matches gets announced, and it gets closer and closer to the show, I start to get anxious. I start to say, you know what, it's gonna be great going in there. There's something about going in against an opponent like yourself, you know, someone that's going to bring 110%, that's going to bring that level of intensity. It's as close to going to war as you can get, being in the ring with you. And it brings out the best in me. And I like when a match is physical and rough. And I think that intensity is a key ingredient that's missing in wrestling. And so, you know, I'm not sick of our matches. And I do think that every time I think that, you know, we're not going to have one, I start missing it. And I'm glad when the next one comes around. As for other opponents that I'd like to face, you'd be surprised at my list, really. One guy that I've been trying to put this match together for ages has been Paul London. You know, not a big star, not someone who's, you know, been world champion, although he'd be more than world champion caliber if he were around now. Personally, I think he has more ring skills than past world champions like CM Punk. But in any event, Paul London's someone I would love to get in the ring with. Another one I'd love to get in the ring with, and you know, I had a great conversation with him in Rhode Island, is Shane Helms, Hurricane. Would love to get a match with him. Still hasn't happened. I feel that one will happen though. Just a matter of time. Would love to get a match with him.
I could see that one happening in Great North Wrestling for sure.
Love to face him. It would be quite an honor. You know, and look at other superstars that are out there. I'd really like to get another match with Ray. And even if I can throw out a few other names, a few other challenges, I think some guys that are making names for themselves on the independent scene. I see a lot of people talking about Ricochet. Met him at Rhode Island too. Didn't get the chance to work with him, but would love to work with Ricochet. I see a lot of people, just a lot of hype around certain guys. There was a guy by the name of A.R. Fox I was scheduled to work with in Maine. He's built quite a name for himself. Would love to get a match with him. You know, just anyone and everyone. And I guess, I mean, if you want to go big, you know, a lot of the big name free agents out there, you know, Cody Rhodes, would love to tangle with him. Even Ryback.
The Great North Wrestling has been growing a lot lately. We've been getting a lot of new fans. So for maybe one of our shoot interview fans who doesn't know too much about your wrestling career and hasn't seen you wrestle too much, but will watch this because they're interested in the behind-the-scene aspect of wrestling, why should they watch your future matches?
Well, because of the Jeremy Prophet match, you get something that you don't get with anybody else, and that's you get a little bit of everything. Now, guys will say you'll get a little bit of everything, but it'll be some marble-mouthed guy that can't string together 2 words and keep you entertained, or it'll be some guy that looks like he should be bagging groceries at a grocery store, or it'll be some guy that can't take 2 steps in a ring without stumbling and falling on his face. I don't claim to be the best at anything. I just claim to be really good at just about everything. I try to fine-tune my game so that I have no weaknesses. So if you need a guy to head out to the ring, stall for time because, I don't know, the top turnbuckle fell off, I can just cut a promo just like that. You know, I've got the improvisational skills to do that. You can put me on a mic anytime, any place. You know, I'm a broadcast journalist. I have a degree for it. I'm not shy to talking. I train every single day. I'm in the gym. There's literally no days off. I'm in a hurry to get to a 24-hour gym now because it's late at night just because I love training. The aesthetic, very important. I was always taught the look. So you're getting the talking, you're getting the look, you're getting the moves. You know, you're not getting a headlock, a tackle, and an arm drag. You know, you're getting athleticism. I pride myself on being athletic, more athletic than a guy my size would normally be. I feel that I'm as close to the total package as you can get in a guy, and I say take one aspect of my game away, the package doesn't fall apart. You know, take away my talking, take away my appearance, take away my ring work. And not only that, but I mean, you're getting the intensity that goes along with it too, and the versatility. If I can say, you know, I said I'm not the best at any one thing, I will say I'm one of the best at being versatile. And I think that's an underrated skill in wrestling, that I can fight big, hard, heavy hitters like yourself. I can fight guys like Rey Mysterio. I can fight all of these people, and I can adapt. I can be what they need. You know, Bruce Lee has a famous quote where he says, you know, you put water into a jar, it becomes the jar. You know, that is me. I can mold to whatever my opponent needs for the match to be the absolute best. So if you don't know who Jeremy Prophet is, you can look me up and you will see. I have all of those things.
And I personally think your next match, May 13th in Smith Falls against Harry Smith, also known as Davey Boy Smith Jr., is going to be one of your toughest matches you've ever had, other than against me. Is there any message you want to say to him personally about that upcoming match in this very special format of the MMA cage?
I really hope that he's underestimating me, because he is definitely not underestimating himself. You know, he brags about his skills, his grappling ability, his striking and whatnot. I know that. I'm sitting at home studying Harry Smith, studying what he does in a ring. I've been in the ring with him before in a professional wrestling ring. Now we're in a cage. Now it's my domain. It's an area where he doesn't have, since he's been born, a little kid in the dungeon, all of that experience and that advantage over me. This is a fight that we're going into, plain and simple. I'm studying him. He is the proverbial face on the proverbial dartboard that I have, and I am studying absolutely everything that he does and picking apart his weaknesses and putting together a strategy and a game plan with my team to be able to best defeat him. I really hope he's underestimating me. He probably hasn't watched anything of what I do. He doesn't know my movements. He doesn't know my timing. He doesn't know my speed. And like I said a little bit earlier, I think he's just going to rely on brute force and the size advantage, which I said I think he should trim down and be forced to make weight for this fight. At least, go down to a reasonable, I think 265 is usually the heavyweight weight limit. I'm pretty sure he's over that. He's looking really chunky the last times I saw him. So, I'm going to be coming in a shy bit over 220 or so. I think he should cut down, and more importantly than that, I hope he's underestimating me. I know I've said it again and again, because I know he is, and I'm going to take advantage of that. I'm going to exploit that to the uttermost, and I think I'm going to open a lot of eyes and surprise a lot of people, especially that of Mr. Harry Smith.
And where can wrestling fans follow you if they want to follow you on social media?
I'm not that big on social media. They can follow me on Twitter at Jeremy Prophet. I don't tweet very often. I got better things to do. I think that, these days everyone's on Twitter. They want to expose their personal lives and whatever. I know we have a president of the United States that's constantly on his Twitter. But
it's not actually him. Those people have people that use it.
Well, we don't know, but I mean, he's on social media. Different strokes for different folks. You can follow me at Jeremy Prophet. You can find me on Facebook. You can pretty much find me on there. If I want you to find me, I'll make sure you find me.
Well, I would thank you for this interview, but I don't like you enough to thank you for anything still.
You and Lanny Poffo.
I also wish you luck against Harry Smith, who I've known for a long time through the dungeon. I think you're going to need luck against him because he's a great fighter, and I think this is going to be in his element as much as it's going to be yours in the MMA cage.
Well, that remains to be seen. So, if you think that Harry's going to win, I encourage you. You can go out and maybe make a bet on him. That's fine. I'll be glad to take your money. I'll be glad to take everyone's money that's going to bet on Harry Smith and is going to underestimate Jeremy Prophet. I've been underestimated my whole career. Nothing new for me. I'm going to be very proud when I'm standing at the end of that match with my hand in the air as the winner.
And is there any message you want to give to the people who have watched you for the past hour and a half on this shoot interview?
If you guys have been watching me for the past hour and a half, you must really, really like me. And to be honest, I wish I could say the same about you folks, but I don't. Still, I'm more than happy to take your money each time you come to see me perform.